Tampa, Florida, land of sunshine, beaches, and the Mafia? You bet. The Trafficante family ruled this sunny paradise with an iron fist, turning it into their personal playground of power and profit. They were like the Corleones, but with better tans. The family's patriarch, Santo Trafficante Sr., was a shrewd operator who built his empire on gambling, extortion, and good old-fashioned intimidation. He was known for his sharp mind, even sharper suits, and the kind of handshake that could make a strong man weep. Under Santo Sr.'s reign, the Trafficantes became untouchable. They were the Teflon Don of Tampa. Nothing stuck. Politicians, judges, cops, they all danced to the family's tune. After all, who wants to mess with a guy who could have you fitted for concrete shoes? Like father, like son. Santo Trafficante Jr. inherited his dad's ruthlessness and then some. He was a mob prince, groomed from birth to take over the family business. And business, as they say, was booming. He had a knack for making money. Trafficante Jr. expanded the family's empire into Cuba, partnering with none other than Meyer Lansky to turn Havana into a gambler's paradise. Casinos, nightclubs, you name it, if it involved sin and a hefty profit margin, the Trafficantes were there. But Santo Jr.'s ambitions went beyond mere money. He craved power, influence, a seat at the table with the biggest players in the game. And what better way to gain that power than by rubbing shoulders with the CIA? Cuba in the 1950s, a heady cocktail of sun, rum and revolution. And right in the thick of it were the Trafficantes, raking in cash from their casino empire, while Fidel Castro plotted his revolution in the mountains. Talk about awkward neighbors. The Trafficantes had a good thing going in Cuba. They were making money hand over fist, living the high life and generally enjoying the perks of being chummy with a dictator like Fulgencio Batista. But revolutions, like tropical storms, have a way of shaking things up. When Castro's rebels swept into Havana in 1959, the party was over. Casinos were shut down, mobsters were on the run, and the Trafficantes found themselves back in Florida, lighter in the wallet but heavier in resentment. Losing Cuba was a blow to the Trafficantes' pride and their bank accounts. Santo Jr., never one to take a hit lying down, decided to take matters into his own hands. His brilliant plan, offing Fidel Castro. Simple, right? Now, you'd think a powerful mob boss like Santo Jr. could hire a professional to take care of a pesky dictator. But no, the CIA had other ideas. They wanted Castro gone too, and they saw an opportunity to use the mob for their dirty work. Thus began one of the most bizarre chapters in American history, the CIA teaming up with the Mafia to kill a foreign leader. It was like something out of a bad spy movie, complete with poison pills, exploding cigars, and enough double crosses to make your head spin. Section 5. Murder, Inc. Let's be clear. The Trafficantes weren't just running casinos and hobnobbing with revolutionaries. They were cold-blooded killers, and they didn't shy away from getting their hands dirty. Their motto? It's not personal, it's strictly business. From contract killings to bloody turf wars, the Trafficantes left a trail of bodies from Tampa to Havana. They were like the grim reapers of the underworld, except they charged by the hit. One particularly gruesome incident involved a rival mobster who made the mistake of crossing the Trafficantes. Let's just say he ended up sleeping with the fishes and leave it at that. The moral of the story? Don't mess with the family. Some crimes are so brazen, so chilling that they linger in the public's memory long after the headlines have faded. The disappearance of Jose Collazo was one such case, a grim reminder of the Trafficantes' ruthlessness. Collazo, a former associate of the family, had the unfortunate habit of talking too much. He knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking, and he wasn't afraid to share his knowledge with the authorities. Big mistake.
One day, Collazo vanished without a trace. Some whispered that he was on a fishing trip, others that he'd entered witness protection. But those in the know had a different theory. Collazo had become a permanent addition to the Trafficantes' underwater real estate portfolio.
You'd think a family as powerful and well-connected as the Trafficantes would be above the law, and for a long time they were. But even the most cunning criminals can't outrun justice forever. Eventually, the law caught up with them. There were trials, grand juries, and enough legal wrangling to make your head spin. Witnesses mysteriously clammed up, evidence disappeared, and juries seemed to suffer from sudden bouts of amnesia. But despite their best efforts, the Trafficantes couldn't escape unscathed. Convictions were handed down, prison sentences were served, and the family's grip on power began to loosen. The Teflon Don, it seemed, wasn't so Teflon after all. As the years went by, the Trafficante crime family's power waned. The old guard was dying off, new gangs were muscling in, and the feds were breathing down their necks. The glory days were over, but even in their twilight years, the Trafficantes clung to their legacy of violence and vice. They were like a fading Hollywood star, still clinging to the spotlight long after their star had dimmed. The streets of Tampa, once their personal fiefdom, were now patrolled by a new breed of criminal. The Trafficante name, once whispered in fear, was now uttered with a mix of nostalgia and disdain. In the end, the Trafficante crime family met the same fate as all empires. They crumbled. Time, that relentless force, eroded their power, leaving behind only whispers and legends. But the myth of the Mafia, the allure of the gangster lifestyle, continues to fascinate us.
We watch mob movies, read true crime novels, and secretly admire the audacity, the sheer chutzpah of these criminal masterminds. And who knows, maybe somewhere in some smoky backroom, a new generation of gangsters is plotting their rise to power, dreaming of building an empire as vast and as ruthless as the Trafficantes. Because let's face it, nothing sells like a good crime story.
The year was 1933. America was deep in the Depression. People were desperate, and a new breed of criminal was on the rise. They were called public enemies. They robbed banks. They kidnapped millionaires. They were ruthless killers. And they were led by a group of cold-blooded criminals known as the Barker Carpis Gang. These weren't your ordinary crooks. They were a traveling circus of mayhem. And their ringmasters were brothers Fred and Arthur Baker, along with Alvin Carpis. The Barker Carpis Gang was notorious for their brazen heists and their utter disregard for human life. They were like something out of a horror movie. Except the blood was real. Their crimes were shocking, their methods were brutal, and their impact on America was profound. They were the stuff of nightmares, but there was also something darkly comedic about their exploits. Maybe it was their sheer audacity. Maybe it was the way they always seemed to be one step ahead of the law. Or maybe it was just the fact that they were so damn good at being bad. Whatever the reason, the Barker Carpis Gang captured the imagination of Depression-era America. They were a sign of the times, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always room for a little bit of chaos. Meeting in Kansas State Penitentiary, Fred Baker and Alvin Carpis quickly became friends on the inside and bonded over the crimes they had committed. With nothing but time in the can to contemplate, the two hatched a plan to form their own gang. Upon Alvin's release in March of 1931, he immediately began recruiting members for the newly formed mob. Just a few months later, they completed their first armed robbery and shot up to national stardom in the sinister world of crime. That was just the start of the success of the gang. They continued to rob and pilfer banks across the Midwest until later that year. In December, while robbing a bank in West Plains, Missouri, the crew became embroiled in a shootout with local authorities. During the ensuing gunfight, one of the Baker Carpis crew managed to shoot and kill the county sheriff, Calvin Roy Kelly. With the crew advancing into the realm of murder, fleeing was the only option. Using the help of Jewish crime boss Harry Sawyer, the group disappeared into the north and took refuge in St. Paul, Minnesota, under the alias Anderson. Coincidentally, the son of the woman who rented them the home was a fan of detective stories and received a new magazine for Christmas. It was just after the start of the new year when the boy recognized the men from the wanted ad on the back of the book and reported them to the local authorities. Fortunately, the St. Paul chief of police was already on Sawyer's payroll and alerted the gang of the tip. The crew packed up and fled once again. The Barker Carpis Gang was on the run. They had become public enemy number one, and the walls were closing in. They sought refuge in a secluded farmhouse in rural Minnesota. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. The FBI had been watching them, and on a cold January morning in 1935, they surrounded the farmhouse. A tense standoff ensued. The gangsters holed up inside were heavily armed. The FBI agents, positioned in the surrounding woods, waited patiently. The silence was broken only by the occasional crackle of gunfire. Then, it happened. A firefight erupted, bullets flew, and when the smoke cleared, one gangster lay dead. It was Fred Barker, Ma Barker's favourite son. Ma Barker, grief-stricken and enraged, continued to fire from the house. But it was a losing battle. The FBI had them outgunned and outmanned. After hours of gunfire, the shooting stopped. The FBI moved in cautiously. Inside, they found Ma Barker lying dead next to her son. The Barker Carpis gang, once the most feared criminal organization in America, had been brought down. Before their dramatic demise, the Barker Carpis gang left a trail of terror across the American heartland. Their crimes were as numerous as they were audacious. They robbed banks with military precision, their Tommy guns blazing. They kidnapped wealthy businessmen, holding them for exorbitant ransoms. And they killed, without hesitation, their victims, often innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. One of their most notorious crimes was the kidnapping of Edward Bremer Jr., a wealthy banker from St. Paul, Minnesota. They held him for a $200,000 ransom, a king's ransom in those days. The kidnapping sent shockwaves through the nation. It demonstrated the reach and ruthlessness of the gang. The FBI, under immense pressure to solve the case, launched a nationwide manhunt. The gang's reign of terror came at a time when America was still reeling from the Great Depression. People were struggling to survive, and the last thing they needed was a gang of ruthless criminals terrorizing the country. The Barker Carpis gang became a symbol of the lawlessness and despair that gripped the nation. They were a symptom of a society on the brink. No account of the Barker Carpis gang would be complete without mentioning their enigmatic matriarch, Ma Barker. A woman of mystery and contradiction, she remains a source of fascination to this day. Some say she was the mastermind behind the gang's operations, a ruthless criminal mastermind disguised as a doting mother. Others claim she was nothing more than a passive bystander, blind to her son's criminal activities. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. What's undeniable is that Ma Barker played a significant role in the gang's rise to infamy. She was a constant presence in their lives, providing them with shelter, alibis, and perhaps most importantly, her unwavering loyalty. She was their biggest supporter and their fiercest protector. Whether she was a criminal mastermind or a misguided mother, one thing is certain. Ma Barker was a force to be reckoned with. She was a woman who defied convention. A mother who would do anything for her children, even if it meant breaking the law. She was a true original, a product of her time, and a reminder that truth is often stranger than fiction. As the Barker Carpis gang's notoriety grew, so too did the pressure on law enforcement to bring them to justice. The FBI, led by a young and ambitious J. Edgar Hoover, made it their top priority. A nationwide manhunt was underway. Agents fanned out across the country, following every lead, every whisper, every rumor. The net was closing in. One by one, members of the gang were captured or killed. Alvin Carpis, known as Creepy for his cold, calculating demeanor, managed to evade capture for a time. But even he couldn't outrun the law forever. He was eventually apprehended in New Orleans, bringing an end to the gang's reign of terror. The capture of Carpis marked the end of an era. The Barker Carpis gang, once the most feared criminal organization in America, had been dismantled. Their reign of terror was over, but their legacy lived on. They had left an indelible mark on the American psyche. They had shown the world that even in the land of opportunity, darkness could prevail. The Barker Carpis gang may be gone, but they are certainly not forgotten. Their story continues to fascinate and horrify us in equal measure. Their crimes were brutal, their methods were ruthless, and their impact on America was profound. They forced law enforcement to adapt to a new breed of criminal, one that was more organized, more sophisticated, and more deadly. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, underwent a major transformation in response to the threat posed by the Barker Carpis gang and other criminal gangs of the era. The Barker Carpis gang may have been a nightmare for law-abiding citizens, but they were a godsend for storytellers. Their exploits have been immortalized in countless books, films, and TV shows. They are a staple of American folklore, a cautionary tale about the dark side of the American dream. And their story continues to resonate today, reminding us that the past is never truly dead. It's not even past. Welcome to the family, the Luchesse family. A name whispered in fear, a name synonymous with power. From the mean streets of New York City to the glittering lights of Las Vegas, their grip on organized crime was undeniable. They were the puppet masters, pulling strings in a world of violence, extortion, and murder. Their story is not for the faint of heart, but if you dare to delve into the shadows, you'll discover a world as captivating as it is terrifying. Our journey begins in the early 20th century, amidst the chaos of New York's burgeoning underworld. Immigrant gangs battled for control of illicit markets, their weapons fueled by desperation and ambition. Among them were the Luchesse, a name destined to rise above the rest. They were not just thugs, they were cunning strategists, forging alliances and eliminating rivals with ruthless efficiency. They understood the language of violence, the power of fear, and the seductive allure of wealth. They built an empire on the backs of the desperate and the vulnerable, their tentacles reaching into every facet of the city's underbelly. Their story is a tapestry woven with threads of greed, betrayal, and bloodshed, a testament to the seductive power of the dark side. The early years were a time of chaos and opportunity. Prohibition, that grand social experiment gone wrong, proved a goldmine for gangsters. The Luchesse family, led by the shrewd Gaetano Tommy Brown Rayner, seized the moment. They trafficked in bootleg liquor, their pockets lined with the thirst of a nation. But ambition, like a double-edged sword, can cut both ways. Rayner's reign was short-lived, brought to an abrupt end by the Castellamarese War, a bloody conflict that reshaped the landscape of organized crime. From the ashes of this war emerged a new power structure, the five families. The Luchesse, now under the iron fist of Tommy Gagliano, secured their place among these titans. Gagliano, a cunning operator, understood the importance of discretion. He valued stability, preferring to operate from the shadows, his influence felt but rarely seen. Gagliano's reign, though long, eventually came to an end. Enter Tommy Three Fingers Luchesse, a man who embodied the family's ruthless ambition. Don't let the nickname fool you, he was missing more than just a finger. He lacked any semblance of a moral compass. Luchesse was a master manipulator, forging alliances with corrupt politicians and union officials. He understood the power of influence, how to make the right friends, and even more importantly, the right enemies disappear. Under his leadership, the family's reach extended far beyond the city streets. He was a pragmatist, a businessman in a blood-stained pinstripe suit. He saw the potential in new ventures, expanding the family's portfolio to include gambling, loan sharking, and narcotics. He was a ruthless opportunist, always willing to exploit a weakness, to turn a profit no matter the cost. The French Connection, heroin hits the streets. The 1960s, the world swayed to the beat of the Beatles, but in the shadows, a different kind of tune played. The heroin trade exploded, and the Luchesse family, always eager for profit, jumped in with both feet. They became key players in the infamous French Connection. Picture this, kilos of pure heroin smuggled in from the poppy fields of Turkey, flooding the streets of New York and beyond. The Luchesse, with their network of corrupt officials and ruthless enforcers, became major players in this deadly game. Money flowed like water, fueling a lavish lifestyle for those at the top. But for every dollar earned, a life was destroyed. Addiction soared, leaving a trail of broken lives in its wake. The Luchesse, masters of the dark side, grew fat on the misery of others. But even within a family built on loyalty and violence, cracks began to show. Power struggles erupted, fueled by greed and ambition. The streets ran red with the blood of those who dared to challenge the established order. The reign of Carmine Tramunti, Luchesse's successor, was marred by internal strife. Factions clashed, vying for control of the family's lucrative rackets. Betrayals cut deep, old friends turned into bitter enemies, and the once sacred oath of omerta, the vow of silence, was broken time and again. The violence reached a fever pitch with the assassination of Anthony Dux Corallo. Corallo, a brutal and ambitious capo, met his end in a hail of bullets, a testament to the ruthlessness that permeated the family's very core. His death marked a turning point, ushering in an era of even greater instability and bloodshed. The rise of John Gotti and the Gambino family in the 1980s cast a long shadow over the New York underworld. Gotti, dubbed the Teflon Don for his ability to evade conviction, became a media sensation, his flamboyant style a stark contrast to the Luchesse's low-key approach. Despite their differences, the Luchesse, under the leadership of Anthony Tony Dux Corallo, found themselves drawn into Gotti's orbit. They collaborated on various criminal enterprises, their fortunes intertwined in a dangerous dance with the law. However, Gotti's penchant for publicity ultimately proved his undoing. His downfall, orchestrated in part by the ambitious Sammy the Bull Gravano, a key figure in the Gambino family, sent shockwaves through the underworld. Gravano's decision to turn state's evidence had far-reaching consequences, ensnaring numerous mobsters, including several high-ranking members of the Luchesse family. The Luchesse family's grip on New York's underworld extended beyond the traditional rackets. They infiltrated legitimate businesses, using their ill-gotten gains to corrupt unions and extort money from construction projects. They were masters of infiltration, their influence seeping into the very fabric of the city. Their story even made its way to Hollywood, immortalized in films like Goodfellas and Donnie Brasco. These cinematic portrayals, while fictionalized, offered a glimpse into the family's inner workings, their codes of conduct, and the brutal consequences of betrayal. The Luchesse's influence even reached the silver screen. They strong-armed their way into Hollywood unions, skimming profits from major motion pictures. Their story became the stuff of legend, a mix of fact and fiction that captivated the public's imagination. Today, the Luchesse family, though weakened by prosecutions and internal strife, remains a force to be reckoned with. They are a reminder that the allure of power and wealth can corrupt even the most unyielding principles. Their story is a cautionary tale, a testament to the seductive nature of power and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Despite their crimes, the Luchesse, like all enduring criminal organizations, understood one fundamental truth. Loyalty is a powerful currency. It could be bought, sold, and traded, but its value was undeniable in their world of shadows and violence. They were masters of survival, adapting to changing times, exploiting new opportunities, and always protecting their own. Their story is a reminder that the underworld, though hidden from view, continues to thrive. Its influence a constant shadow lurking beneath the surface of our society. The Wild West was never short of characters who could shoot a grin as quickly as they could a gun. Among these were the Younger Brothers gang, whose exploits were as notorious as their moustaches were magnificent. Born to a life of southern gentry gone awry, Cole, Jim, John and Bob Younger turned to outlawry after the Civil War, a common career move in those turbulent times. Their saga is a peculiar blend of tragedy and comedy, a series of misadventures wrapped in gunsmoke. It's said that the Youngers robbed banks with the politeness only southern gentlemen could muster, apologizing as they emptied tills and tipped their hats to the ladies. Their charm was as much their weapon as the pistols at their belts. On a sunny September day in 1876, the town of Northfield, Minnesota, became the stage for one of the most dramatic episodes in the saga of the Younger Brothers.
The locals, however, were not as compliant as the gang had hoped. As Cole and his brothers stormed the bank, the townspeople quickly turned from bystanders to resistance fighters, grabbing whatever weapons they could. It was a chaotic ballet of bullets and bravery, with banknotes fluttering down like leaves in a storm.
The Youngers, finding themselves in a hornet's nest, fought fiercely, but with the creeping realization that this heist might not end in their favor. Despite their efforts, the heist turned sour, illustrating that even the best-laid plans of outlaws and men often go awry. The gang escaped with far less money than they had hoped for, leaving behind a town seething with anger and littered with bullet casings. Not every endeavor the Younger Brothers undertook ended with gunfire and drama.
One such instance occurred during a botched train robbery, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, hilariously so. The gang, known for their meticulous planning, somehow overlooked the fact that the train they targeted was carrying not gold, not silver, but livestock.
Imagine the surprise and the stench when instead of treasure chests, they found themselves face to face with a cargo of disgruntled pigs. Adding to the chaos, a rookie gang member, eager to prove his worth, accidentally discharged his weapon, shooting himself in the foot, literally. The pain was real, but so was the laughter that followed, even among the gang members themselves. The local newspapers had a field day with the story, headlining it as the great pig robbery that went hog wild. The armament of the Younger Brothers was as varied as their heists.
Cole Younger, the de facto leader, favored a Colt .45 revolver, a popular choice among outlaws for its reliability and the punch it packed. It was said that Cole could shoot an apple off a tree from 50 paces, a skill he demonstrated more than once to settle bets or impress onlookers.
Jim Younger preferred the shotgun. The spread of its shot made it ideal for the chaotic encounters the gang often found themselves in. Whether it was blasting through the doors of a bank or covering their escape, Jim's shotgun boomed across the prairies, announcing their presence or departure with thunderous authority. The gang also made use of rifles, particularly for long-range engagements. The echo of their rifle shots across the Minnesota landscape marked a turning point in the gang's career, one that would eventually lead them to infamy and downfall. The tales of the younger brothers' victims are as varied as they are tragic and occasionally bizarrely humorous.
Each victim's story adds a human element to the gang's legend, blending the dark with a touch of the absurd. One such victim was a bank teller who, amidst a robbery, fainted from fright, only to wake up and faint again when he saw the amount taken. This double fainting act became a favorite anecdote in local law, often told with a smirk and a shake of the head at the sheer theatricality of it.
Another peculiar case was that of a sheriff who, in pursuit of the gang, accidentally rode his horse into a bar. The scene, straight out of a slapstick comedy, ended with the sheriff apologizing to a bewildered bartender and a room full of amused patrons. The younger brothers, meanwhile, escaped, likely chuckling at the absurdity of law enforcement tactics. While Cole, Jim, John and Bob Younger are well-known figures, along with the James brothers who were an integral part of the James Younger gang, the crew also included several lesser-known outlaws whose contributions to their nefarious deeds were no less significant.
These shadowy figures played vital roles in the gang's operations, and their stories are often overshadowed by the more flamboyant escapades of the younger brothers themselves. One such member was Clell Miller, a cousin to the Youngers, whose expertise with explosives made him invaluable during bank heists.
It was Clell who often handled the dynamite, blowing safes open with a precision that was both impressive and occasionally overzealous.
Another key figure was Charlie Pitts, a close friend of the Youngers, known for his quick wit and quicker draw. Charlie was often the one to diffuse tense situations with a joke, keeping spirits high even in the face of danger.
These men, along with others whose names have faded into obscurity, were integral to the operations and legend of the Younger Brothers gang. The law finally caught up with the Younger Brothers in 1876 after the disastrous Northfield raid. Wounded and exhausted, the gang was captured after a massive manhunt that involved local posses and even the Pinkerton detectives.
The capture was not without its drama as the gang resisted fiercely, unwilling to go down without a fight. The trial of the Younger brothers was a spectacle in itself, drawing crowds from all over to witness the downfall of some of the most notorious outlaws of the time.
During the trial, the Youngers were defiant, often making sardonic remarks that amused the public and frustrated the prosecutors.
Cole Younger, ever the spokesman, delivered a statement that was part bravado, part poetic reflection on their lives as outlaws.
This speech was widely reported and added to the legend of the Youngers, portraying them not just as criminals, but as folk heroes caught in the tides of changing times. The sentence was harsh, but expected life imprisonment. The legacy of the Younger Brothers gang is a complex tapestry of crime, charisma, and a touch of comic relief.
The Younger brothers, with their mix of daring deeds and dark humor, have become archetypes of the American outlaw, celebrated and vilified in equal measure. These unanswered questions add a layer of intrigue and enduring fascination with the gang. The gang's exploit have been romanticized in books, films, and folk songs, each adding layers to their legend. Yet not all aspects of their story are clear. There remain unsolved mysteries about the Younger brothers, such as the whereabouts of some of their alleged hidden loot, which continues to spark interest among treasure hunters and historians alike.
Their legacy, like the Wild West itself, remains a captivating blend of reality and myth, continuing to capture the imagination of those who wander into its shadowy realms. They were the epitome of duality, the Kray Twins, Ronnie and Reggie. Charmers in tailored suits, their smiles could disarm, their eyes could chill a room. These East London boys weren't just gangsters, they were a spectacle, a paradox, ruthless killers with a peculiar charm. Born in the heart of London's East End in 1933, the twins rose from street brawlers to become the city's most notorious criminals. They built their empire on fear and intimidation, their names whispered in hushed tones from the dingy pubs of Bethnal Green to the swanky nightclubs of the West End. The Kray Twins were a study in contrasts, known for extreme brutality and generosity within their inner circle. The Kray Twins' journey into the heart of London's underworld began on the streets. Their early days were a whirlwind of bare-knuckle brawls and petty theft, a violent ballet learned on the cobbled streets of post-war London. They craved power, respect, and the intoxicating allure of wealth. Their rise was swift, their fists and fear-mongering tactics clearing a path through the ranks of London's underworld. They formed the firm, their own gang, attracting a motley crew of thugs, enforcers and criminals seeking protection or a piece of the action. Cross the Krays, and you'd be lucky to walk away with your kneecaps intact. The Blind Beggar pub in Whitechapel, a seemingly ordinary East End watering hole. But to those in the know, it was the Krays' fortress. It was here, amidst the stale scent of beer and cigarette smoke, that deals were struck, alliances forged, and lives irrevocably altered. One chilly March evening in 1966, the Blind Beggar witnessed an event that solidified the Krays' infamy. George Cornell, a rival gang member, made a fatal mistake. He uttered a disrespectful remark about Ronnie Kray, calling him a poof. Ronnie, never one to tolerate disrespect, especially in his own office, pulled out his 9mm Luger and shot Cornell point blank in his forehead, killing him instantly. The murder, carried out in cold blood and in full view of witnesses, sent shockwaves through London. The Krays' reign was a paradoxical blend of chilling violence and an odd, even darkly comedic approach to their criminal endeavours. They were masters of intimidation, but they also seemed to possess a twisted sense of humour, a macabre playfulness that both intrigued and terrified. Stories of their antics, a mix of fact and underworld folklore, circulated like wildfire through London streets. Reggie Kray, a known boxing enthusiast, allegedly straightened out a crooked fight promoter with his bare fists. Ronnie was also well known for his eccentric fascination with astrology, with rumours swirling that he consulted his horoscope before making major decisions. They were known to use fear as a weapon, employing chilling tactics to keep their associates in line and their enemies cowering. This blend of brutality and bizarre humour became a hallmark of the Kray Twins. Despite the trail of terror they left behind, the Kray Twins possessed an undeniable allure. They were the epitome of the charming rogue, their charisma disarming, their presence magnetic. Their nightclub Esmeralda's Barn became a magnet for London's elite. Celebrities, politicians and sporting heroes flocked to the venue, eager to rub shoulders with the infamous twins. They were the ultimate example of dangerous charm, blurring the lines between the glamorous and the grotesque. Their generosity, especially within their local community, was legendary. By the mid-1960s, the Krays' empire, built on fear and violence, began to crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. Their ruthlessness, once a tool for control, became reckless, fueled by paranoia and a growing sense of invincibility. The police, under increasing pressure to put an end to the twins' reign, were hot on their trail, meticulously gathering evidence. The net tightened in December 1968 when Jack the Hat McVitie, a low-level associate of the Krays, failed to carry out a hit on a rival gangster. Furious and paranoid, Ronnie lured McVitie to a party where he was brutally murdered. The police, armed with witness testimonies and incriminating evidence, finally had enough to arrest the twins. The Kray Twins' trial was a media frenzy, a public spectacle that captivated and horrified the nation in equal measure. The courtroom became a stage, the twins, ever the showmen, playing their parts with a chilling blend of arrogance and indifference. Found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, the Krays' reign of terror was officially over. But their story, far from fading into obscurity, took on a life of its own. Books, documentaries, and countless articles dissected their lives, their crimes, and their enduring grip on the public imagination. Despite the brutality of their crimes, the Kray Twins became unlikely cultural icons. Ronnie Kray died in Broadmoor Hospital in 1995. His mind ravaged by mental illness, his physical health deteriorated after years of imprisonment. Reggie, released from prison on compassionate grounds in 2000 due to terminal cancer, died just 8.5 weeks later. The Kray Twins' legacy is a complex and troubling one. They were ruthless criminals responsible for unspeakable acts of violence and terror. Yet they remain strangely compelling figures. Their story a testament to the enduring power of myth and the human fascination with the dark side of human nature. The legend of the Kray Twins, the smiling killers of London's East End, will live on.